a human right to burn as much fossil fuel as they want, to drive as fast as they want through urban areas, to carry a gun and possibly shoot people. We're faced with a conflict here between two kinds of people, between those who want to expand their interests regardless of other people's interests, and those who believe there should be limits on what we do, because beyond those limits we damage other people's interests and we damage the ecosystem which supports all of us. And
you could also say corporate profits against survival.
Well, exactly, because a lot of these people claim to be ordinary citizens groups. A lot of them are astroturf groups, fake grassroots groups funded by corporations, and so the corporate money backs up that tendency towards endless expansion and greed and selfishness. And if it weren't climate change, we would all be fighting over something else. Climate change has just become the front line in the war between those two groups of people. But the expanders will just grab whatever they can, and they will use exactly the same tactics of denial and obfuscation and the sowing of doubt and confusion as they've done with climate change. When the next global crisis arrives, caused by human greed, whether it's peak oil, or whether it's water, or whether it's phosphate, or whether it's soil, whatever it might be, there's a whole load of these lined up behind climate change. Whatever the next one is, we'll see the same war being fought. Already we see very similar wars being fought over a whole series of issues. For instance, in the UK, we have two very distinct groups of people. There are the local residents' road safety campaigns, who run groups like Road Peace, who are trying to reduce the number of accidents on the roads and the number of children killed and the number of cyclists and pedestrians killed. And there are the speed freaks, the petrol heads, who regard it as their human right to drive as fast as they want, and that anyone who gets in the way is an enemy of society, and they burn down speed cameras, and they make a doctrine of doing 90 miles an hour in a 30 mile an hour zone, and they kill a lot of people. And that they're these people who are living in a kind of Mad Max world in their head. And of course, Mad Max is the expander's fantasy, where, hey, there are not many of us left on Earth, we can just grab whatever resources we can, go where we want, there's no law and order, we can do whatever we want. And that battle between expanders and restrainers is going to be a battle we see repeated again and again and again and again on lots of different issues.
There's a lot of issues that have been left out that are very much climate change issues that we're not paying attention to. But the most obvious one that hasn't even been looked at for the hydrological aspects of the impact on climate change is water, which we talk about peak oil, but really the real issue that's going to be the final frontier is water. What are your thoughts about that in relationship to climate change and the coming battles?
I mean, for me, climate change is about a lot of things, but the two at the top of the list are food and water. This is about humanity's ability to survive in many parts of the world, and indeed it's about the possibility of encountering structural global famine. In other words, not enough food for the people who live here even in a good harvest year. And
it's been the end of every civilization.
Yeah.
And the Mayas, the Incas, the Sumerians, on back. Yeah.
Exactly. And it's a terrifying prospect, because you think at the moment we have got enough surplus food to feed about another billion people, and yet 800 million people go hungry every year. Are in a permanent state of malnutrition. Picture what the world's going to be like if we're in structural famine, where there's actually not enough food to go around, even if it was perfectly distributed. Then you're running into very, very deep water indeed there, and it would make all previous instances of famine and disaster look like sideshows of the circus of human suffering.
George, I know you've got a full day and you're pretty worn out, but I just, as the last words to the American population, people that are listening to this broadcast, what advice do you have to them? So many people feel that they don't make a difference. And what are your thoughts about what somebody can do to actually make a difference in this issue?
In one respect, we are the most privileged generation that has ever existed, because we are the only people now who can make the difference as far as the biggest issue that humanity has ever encountered is concerned. Our forebears couldn't do it because they didn't have enough knowledge, they didn't realise what they were getting into, and our descendants won't be able to do it because it'll be too late. And so it's just us, it's just these generations which are on Earth today who can make the running and can change the way the world runs to the extent that we determine whether or not human life is going to continue in many parts of the world. This is the biggest crisis humanity has ever faced. And so we are in this unique, privileged position where we can actually respond to the crisis. We're the only people who can, the only people who ever will be able to. And if we don't respond to it, that is the greatest abnegation of human responsibility there's ever been. But we have to be smart in the way we respond, and what we need to do is to get far more people mobilised and involved in the campaign than we've seen so far. It surprises me how few people have become active climate change campaigners so far. It's rising very rapidly, but not rapidly enough. We need to make a set of very clear demands. At the moment we have a whole load of disparate demands firing off in all different directions. I mean, in my view, there's a very, very simple demand: leave fossil fuels in the ground, which is...
And don't cut down the trees.
And don't cut down the trees, exactly. Yes, those are the two complementary policies.
Most
leave fossil
obvious,
fuels in the ground, don't cut down the trees. Now that, who can argue with that as a policy for climate change? That is the only thing which ultimately makes sense. And if you're not aiming to do that, and I'm glad you added that bit, because of course those are the two sides of the same policy. If you're not aiming to do that, you are not aiming to curtail climate change.
Well, George Monbiot, it's great to have you on Conversations. I appreciate the work you've been doing for many years, and I know you will continue to do that.
Thank you very much indeed, Michael. That's my pleasure.
Great stuff.
Okay.